In the summer of 2008, a missing person report for a 2-year-old girl named Caylee Anthony would evolve into one of America's most controversial criminal cases. What started as a mother's tearful appeal for her daughter's safe return became a chilling saga of lies, deception, and mystery that captivated and divided the nation. Caylee Anthony, born on March 19, 1986, in Ohio, became widely known when, in 2008, her 2-year-old daughter, Caylee Anthony, was reported missing. The case took a disturbing turn when it was revealed that Caylee had been missing for 31 days before Cindy Anthony, Caylee's grandma, contacted authorities. Cindy's 911 call indicated deep suspicion, even stating that Caylee's car smelled like there's been a dead body. Grandma Cindy Anthony had strong suspicions about Caylee's mother, Caylee's version of events, and was, to a degree, seeking to uncover the truth, even if it meant facing the possibility of her daughter's involvement. During the investigation, Cindy was often vocal and pressed Caylee for information. She cooperated with law enforcement, even though it meant going against Caylee's claims. Cindy's decision to call the police after not seeing her granddaughter for a month, despite Caylee's reassurances, implied that she wasn't willing to ignore the unsettling signs and was determined to find out the truth, whether or not it implicated Caylee. On July 15, 2008, Cindy Anthony, Caylee's grandmother, called 911 to report her granddaughter missing. Cindy claimed she hadn't seen Caylee in 31 days and was desperate for answers. In that call, she revealed that her daughter, Caylee Anthony, had not been forthcoming about her daughter's whereabouts. In fact, in the audio clip from the 911 call, Grandma Cindy Anthony could be heard saying, "It smells like there's been a dead body in the damn car." The situation was disturbing, or whatever it is. Grandma Cindy wants to get to the bottom of it. Where is Caylee Anthony? Why did Caylee Anthony waited 31 days to report Caylee is missing? Why did Caylee's car smell like decomposition? She will not be quiet until she got answers. Grandma Cindy 911 call. Those words ignited a firestorm. Authorities arrived quickly, but as they began investigating, inconsistencies in Caylee's story became glaringly apparent. When questioned, Caylee claimed that Caylee had been kidnapped by her nanny, a woman named Zenaida Gonzalez, who she said had been watching Caylee while she was at work. Why will the nanny do such a thing? Did she ask for money? At this point, the detective were trying to get to the bottom of the issues as to understand why the nanny will do such a thing. Could this be for financial gain or ransom? In some cases, kidnappings are financially motivated. Could it be that the nanny is seeking a ransom or expect the family to pay for the child's return, thinking they are wealthy? Or is there a dispute, revenge, or resentment that the nanny want to settle toward the family? In case of strained employment or personal grievances, the nanny could kidnap the child out of anger, jealousy, or revenge against the family. This could be triggered by perceived mistreatment, unfair pay, or being dismissed without cause. The detectives were unable to establish any of these motives. Worst still, they couldn't establish Caylee ever had a nanny. According to Caylee's story, this nanny had been taking care of Caylee when she disappeared. Caylee insisted that Zani was responsible for Caylee's kidnapping, maintaining that Caylee was safe but in the nanny's custody. This story became central to Caylee's narrative when questioned by law enforcement and her family. However, as police investigated, they found no evidence that Zenaida Gonzalez or Zani the nanny existed in Caylee's life. Caylee's story unraveled further when detectives discovered that much of what she said was fabricated. The name Caylee used, Zenaida Gonzalez, did belong to a real woman, but she had no connection to Caylee or Caylee and had never met them. The nanny story ultimately damaged Caylee's credibility, as it became clear this was a fictitious account. It raised serious questions about her motives and behavior and contributed to the public and investigative suspicions against her, especially when no nanny or evidence of a kidnapping ever emerged. This lie became one of the most infamous aspects of the case, symbolizing the extensive deceptions that surrounded Caylee's disappearance. But as detectives dug deeper, they uncovered troubling lies. Casey hadn't been working. The life she'd described to her family and friends was an elaborate fabrication. Casey Anthony had not been working, despite her claims to the contrary. Throughout the investigation into her daughter Kaylee's disappearance, Casey repeatedly told friends, family, and police that she was employed as an event coordinator at Universal Studios in Orlando, Florida. However, this was entirely fabricated. In fact, during the investigation, Casey even took detectives to Universal Studios, pretending to lead them to her office. When they arrived, it became clear she had no job there, and Casey eventually admitted that she hadn't worked there in years. This revelation added to the many inconsistencies and lies Casey told during the investigation, which intensified suspicions about her actions and intentions in the period leading up to Kaylee's disappearance. Detectives quickly realized that nothing Casey told them checked out. The more they looked, the more they found a trail of deception. As the investigation progressed, with no other credible suspects or alternative explanations for Kaylee's disappearance, Casey remained the focus. When investigators inspected Casey's car, they noted a strong odor that seemed unmistakably linked to human decomposition. But without a body, there were still more questions than answers. 5 months later, on December 11, 2008, the case took a tragic turn. A meter reader named Roy Kronk stumbled upon skeletal remains in a wooded area less than a mile from the Anthony family home. The remains were identified as Kaylee Anthony, ending any hope of a safe return. It was revealed that the condition of Kaylee's remains made it difficult to determine an exact cause of death. Casey Anthony was arrested and charged with first-degree murder, aggravated child abuse, and other counts related to Kaylee's death. Casey defense claimed that Kaylee's death was a tragic accident. They alleged that Kaylee drowned in the family pool, and in panic, Casey and her father, George Anthony, covered it up. They also suggested that Casey's lies were a product of psychological trauma from alleged abuse by her father. Casey defense team claimed that Casey had suffered psychological trauma from alleged sexual abuse by her father, George Anthony. Her attorneys argued that this abuse was part of why Casey developed deep emotional and psychological issues that led her to lie compulsively and act in ways that appeared deceptive and erratic during the investigation into her daughter Kaylee's disappearance. According to the defense, the alleged trauma affected Casey's mental health and contributed to her pattern of avoidance and secrecy, especially in times of crisis. The defense suggested that the abuse caused Casey to develop coping mechanisms such as lying and compartmentalizing her emotions to avoid confronting painful realities. This defense strategy aimed to provide a possible explanation for Casey's bizarre behavior following Kaylee's disappearance, as well as her failure to report Kaylee missing for 31 days. George Anthony denied these allegations, and no concrete evidence of abuse was presented in court. The claims remain unproven and have been widely disputed. However, the allegations were enough to cast a shadow over Casey's past, influencing the jury's perception of her behavior and offering a possible psychological explanation for some of her actions. Regardless of the truth of these claims, the defense's arguments underscore how complex family dynamics and unresolved trauma can affect behavior in high-stress situations, though these factors alone do not necessarily explain the specifics of Kaylee's tragic death. Defense attorney claimed that she lied because she had been trained to lie, to cover up shameful secrets. This is not a murder case, it's a tragedy. Casey's accusations against her father added yet another layer of complexity and controversy to the case, leaving the public and the jury to untangle fact from fiction. After weeks of explosive testimony and 11 hours of deliberation, the jury reached a verdict that stunned the world: not guilty of first-degree murder, not guilty of aggravated child abuse, and not guilty of manslaughter. Casey Anthony was only found guilty of providing false information to law enforcement. Casey defense attorney said, "This was a case built on circumstantial evidence. Without a clear cause of death or concrete proof, the jury couldn't convict." But that verdict left the public reeling. Casey leaves the courthouse, shielded by her defense team as protesters shout, demanding justice for Kaylee. The not guilty verdict sent shockwaves across the nation, and the public's outrage was palpable. Many felt justice had failed, and questions about what really happened to Kaylee Anthony remained unanswered. Despite an extensive investigation and a high-profile trial, no definitive account of Kaylee's death has ever been established, leaving several mysteries and unresolved aspects. For example, cause of Kaylee's death. Truth behind the accidental drowning theory. What did Casey's family know? Why so many lies? What was the motivation if it was murder? The identity of Kaylee's biological father remains unknown, as Casey has never publicly disclosed his identity, and he was not involved in Kaylee's life. While some speculated about Kaylee's parentage due to the defense's allegations of abuse, this line of questioning was never substantiated with any proof. George Anthony himself has consistently denied any abuse or inappropriate relationship with Casey, and no genetic or forensic evidence was introduced to suggest that George was Kaylee's biological father. These lingering questions have kept the case surrounded by controversy and intrigue. The lack of clear answers means that the full truth behind Kaylee Anthony's death may never be known, leaving the case open to speculation and ongoing public fascination.